Life does not respond to wishes. It responds to wisdom. If you look carefully at your results, you will discover something important in your life today is the result of how you have been thinking for years. Not what you hoped for, not what you intended, but what you believed, practiced, and tolerated. A losing philosophy is not bad luck. It is a collection of poor ideas practiced daily. Most people don't fail because they aim too high. They fail because they accept ideas that are too small. They say things like, "That's just the way it is," or "This is all I can do," or "It's not my fault." And the moment you accept those thoughts, progress comes to a halt. You don't change your life by changing your address. You change your life by changing your philosophy. A losing mindset blames circumstances. A winning mindset takes responsibility. The moment you say, "I am responsible," everything changes. Your focus, your energy, your discipline. Responsibility is not heavy, it is powerful. It gives you control. Here is one of life's great lessons. We don't get paid for hard work. We get paid for value. And value does not increase by chance. It increases when you decide to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Your income, your health, your relationships, all of them are mirrors reflecting who you are becoming. Destroying a losing philosophy does not require dramatic action. It requires consistent correction, small changes in thinking, small changes in habits, small changes in how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. Success is not built in a day, but it is destroyed every day by neglect. A winning mindset understands this pain is not permanent, but quitting makes it permanent. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons. Every day you must choose which weight you will carry. Do not wish for an easier life. Wish for more wisdom. Do not wish for fewer problems. Wish for greater skill. Because life will always challenge you at the level you are growing. And that's not a curse. That's evidence of progress. When you change your philosophy, you change how you see failure. Failure is no longer an enemy, it becomes instruction. It teaches refinement, patience, and humility. And those qualities build strength that shortcuts never can. Your future is not decided by the economy, the government, or your past. It is decided by the standards you set today. Decide to read when others scroll. Decide to practice when others rest. Decide to grow when others complain. These decisions may seem ordinary, but practiced daily, they create an extraordinary life. You don't need more time. You need better use of time. You don't need more motivation. You need stronger habits. And you don't need permission to change. You only need a decision. Make that decision today. Decide to abandon excuses. Decide to replace weak thinking with disciplined action. Decide to become someone your future will thank. Because when you destroy a losing philosophy and adopt a winning mindset, life begins to cooperate. Not because it became easier, but because you became better. And that is the ultimate victory. A losing philosophy is not something people are born with. No one enters the world believing they are incapable, undeserving, or destined to fail. These ideas are learned slowly over time, absorbed through experiences, conversations, disappointments, and repeated exposure to negative thinking. Because they are learned, they feel familiar, and familiarity often disguises itself as truth. People begin to accept limiting beliefs as facts, not realizing they were conditioned into them. This is why many individuals live far below their potential without ever questioning why. They assume life is simply happening to them, when in reality, their philosophy is quietly shaping every outcome. From a young age, people are influenced by what they hear and observe. A child who repeatedly hears that success is only for the lucky, or that people like, don't get ahead begins to internalize those ideas. Over time, these thoughts settle into the subconscious and become the operating system for decision making. The individual may grow older, gain skills, and even desire improvement, yet still sabotage progress because the underlying philosophy remains unchanged. This is how intelligent, capable people stay stuck, not due to lack of ability, but because of inherited or adopted beliefs they never chose consciously. A losing philosophy often shows up as excuses that sound reasonable. Phrases like, "I tried already," "It's too late for me," or "This is just how things are not statements of reality. They are conclusions drawn from limited evidence. When a person fails once or twice and then decides that failure is permanent, they are not responding to facts, but to interpretation. Interpretation becomes belief. Belief becomes habit, and habit becomes lifestyle. The tragedy is that most people never trace the problem back to its root. They try to change results without changing the thinking that produced those results. The good news is that anything learned can be unlearned. The mind is not fixed, it is adaptable. Just as negative beliefs were installed through repetition, positive and empowering beliefs can be installed the same way. However, unlearning requires awareness. A person must first recognize that their current philosophy is optional. The moment someone realizes, "This is not the truth, this is just a story I've been telling myself," they regain power. Awareness interrupts autopilot and creates space for choice, and choice is where transformation begins. Unlearning a losing philosophy does not mean denying past pain or pretending challenges did not exist. It means refusing to let past experiences dictate future decisions. Many people confuse explanation with justification. A difficult past may explain why someone thinks a certain way, but it does not justify staying there forever. Growth begins when a person decides that their future deserves better thinking than their past provided. This decision alone begins to weaken the grip of old beliefs. Reprogramming the mind requires consistent exposure to better ideas. Just as negativity entered through repeated influence, improvement enters the same way. Reading, listening, reflection, and association all play a role. The mind must be fed deliberately, because it will absorb something regardless. When a person replaces defeat-based thinking with possibility-based thinking day after day, the old philosophy slowly loses strength. It doesn't disappear overnight, but it becomes quieter, less convincing, less controlling. A losing philosophy survives on unconsciousness. A winning mindset grows through intentional thought. When someone begins to question their assumptions, challenge their excuses, and replace old conclusions with new standards, change becomes inevitable. The most powerful realization a person can have is that they are not broken. They were simply taught poorly. And once a person understands that, they stop seeing themselves as victims of circumstance and start seeing themselves as students of life who can choose what they learn next. Results are the most honest feedback life gives. They do not argue, exaggerate, or offer excuses. They simply exist as evidence. When someone looks at their income, their health, their relationships, or their personal growth, they are not looking at luck or fate. They are looking at the outcome of consistent patterns of thinking and behavior. Results don't lie because they are the final product of choices made over time. While emotions can distort perception and stories can soften reality, results remain neutral and accurate. Many people prefer to judge themselves by intentions rather than outcomes. They say they meant well, they tried hard, or they wanted something badly. Intention feels good because it protects the ego, but life rewards execution, not desire. Wanting success does not produce success, and wishing for change does not create change. The gap between where a person is and where they want to be is revealed clearly by results. This gap is not meant to shame, but to instruct. Results are not punishment, they are information. When someone avoids examining their results, they also avoid growth. It is uncomfortable to confront evidence that contradicts self-image, so people look outward instead. They blame the economy, the timing, the people around them, or circumstances beyond their control. While these factors may influence the journey, they never fully explain the destination. Two people can face similar circumstances and produce entirely different outcomes. The difference lies not in the environment, but in interpretation and response. Results expose that difference without debate. A powerful shift occurs when a person stops asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and starts asking, "What is this showing me?" Results act like a mirror. They reflect habits, priorities, discipline, and consistency. Poor health reflects neglect of the body. Financial struggle reflects neglect of skill, value, or planning. Weak relationships reflect neglect of communication and empathy. These reflections are not insults, they are invitations to adjust. Ignoring the mirror does not change the reflection. Honest self-evaluation is a rare discipline. It requires humility because it removes the comfort of excuses. Yet, it is also deeply empowering. When someone accepts that their results are connected to their actions, they gain the ability to change those actions. Denial keeps people stuck, but responsibility creates options. The moment someone says, "This is my result, therefore something I'm doing must change," progress begins. Ownership turns frustration into strategy. Results also reveal consistency, not intensity. A single burst of effort does not outweigh months or years of neglect. Life averages behavior. Small actions repeated daily matter far more than occasional motivation. This is why people feel confused when they work hard for a week and see no change. Results lag behind effort. They show up later, after repetition has had time to compound. Understanding this prevents discouragement and builds patience. A losing philosophy argues with results. It insists they are unfair, temporary, or meaningless. A winning mindset studies them. It asks what worked, what didn't, and what must improve. This mindset understands that improvement is not personal, it is practical. When results are good, they are clues worth repeating. When results are poor, they are lessons worth learning. Either way, they are useful. Life will always give feedback, but not everyone listens. Some people repeat the same year over and over because they refuse to interpret the evidence. Growth begins when results are treated as teachers instead of enemies. They point directly to what needs to be strengthened, refined, or eliminated. Once a person learns to respect results, they stop arguing with reality and start cooperating with it. And cooperation with reality is the foundation of all lasting success. Blame is one of the most subtle yet destructive habits a person can develop. It often disguises itself as logic or fairness, but its true effect is weakness. The moment someone blames circumstances, people, or conditions for their situation, they hand over their power. Blame feels relieving in the short term because it removes responsibility, but that relief comes at a high cost. It freezes growth. A person who blames is no longer a participant in their life, but a commentator standing on the sidelines, explaining why progress is impossible. When blame becomes a habit, it reshapes the mind. Instead of asking what can be done, the mind searches for what went wrong and who caused it. Energy that could be used to improve skills or adjust strategy is wasted on justification. Over time, this habit creates a sense of helplessness. The individual begins to believe that outcomes are controlled by forces beyond them, which makes effort feel pointless. This is how blame weakens the mind. It convinces a capable person that they are powerless. Responsibility works in the opposite direction. The moment a person accepts responsibility, even for things they did not directly cause, their strength increases. Responsibility does not mean self-criticism or guilt. It means ownership. It means saying, "This is my life, and I am accountable for what I do next." That statement alone restores control. While a person cannot control every event, they can always control their response, preparation, and attitude. Responsibility focuses attention on action rather than explanation. Blame keeps people emotionally comfortable, but practically stuck. Responsibility can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes excuses. It demands honesty. Yet discomfort is often the doorway to growth. When someone accepts responsibility, they begin to look for solutions instead of sympathy. They ask better questions, take better actions, and develop resilience. The mind becomes sharper because it is trained to solve problems rather than avoid them. Blame also damages character over time. A person who blames repeatedly begins to lose self-respect. Deep down, they know they are avoiding the truth, and that internal conflict erodes confidence. Responsibility, on the other hand, builds self-trust. Every time someone takes ownership and follows through, they reinforce the belief that they are reliable. Confidence does not come from positive thinking alone. It comes from keeping promises to oneself. One of the greatest misunderstandings about responsibility is the belief that it means accepting fault for everything. In reality, responsibility is about response, not fault. A person may not be responsible for the challenge they face, but they are responsible for how they handle it. This distinction is crucial. It allows someone to maintain dignity without becoming bitter. They stop asking who is to blame and start asking what must be done. Strong individuals are not those who avoid problems, but those who face them directly. They understand that blaming delays solutions, while responsibility accelerates them. This mindset creates momentum. Instead of feeling trapped by circumstances, the individual feels engaged in shaping outcomes. Even small acts of responsibility, when practiced daily, strengthen discipline and mental toughness. Blame narrows perspective. Responsibility expands it. When someone accepts responsibility, they begin to see opportunities where they once saw obstacles. They become adaptable, resourceful, and proactive. The mind becomes trained to look forward rather than backward. Over time, this shift transforms identity. The person no longer sees themselves as someone life happens to, but as someone who happens to life. That shift is not dramatic or instant, but it is powerful and permanent because strength grows every time responsibility is chosen over blame. Greatness is rarely the result of one dramatic decision or a single heroic effort. It is almost always the outcome of small, repeated actions that seem insignificant in the moment. The future is shaped quietly, day by day, through choices so ordinary they are often overlooked. What a person reads for 10 minutes, how they start their morning, how they speak to themselves, and how they respond to minor challenges all contribute to a direction that eventually becomes destiny. Most people underestimate the power of small disciplines because they are unimpressive. Waking up a little earlier, writing a few goals, exercising briefly, learning something new, or practicing self-control in conversation does not feel life-changing because the impact is not immediate. The mind dismisses these actions as optional. Yet life does not measure effort by intensity. It measures by consistency. Small disciplines practiced daily accumulate quietly, like interest compounding, until one day the results are undeniable. The danger lies not in dramatic mistakes, but in daily neglect. Skipping a discipline once seems harmless. Skipping it repeatedly creates a pattern. Over time, that pattern hardens into habit, and habit solidifies into character. Character then determines outcomes. This is how futures are lost without any single moment of failure. No collapse, no crisis. Just a gradual drift caused by ignoring the small things that matter most. A powerful life is built the same way. Small acts of discipline strengthen self-respect. Each time a person does what they said they would do, even when it is inconvenient, they reinforce trust in themselves. That trust becomes confidence, and confidence fuels momentum. The individual no longer relies on motivation because discipline has taken its place. Motivation fluctuates, but discipline remains steady. Small disciplines also sharpen awareness. They train the mind to value progress over comfort. When someone commits to daily improvement, they begin to notice wasted time, negative influences, and unproductive habits. This awareness leads to better decisions, not through force, but through clarity. The person becomes more intentional, more selective, and more focused because their daily practices demand it. The opposite is also true. small acts of neglect weaken the future just as surely. Poor eating habits, careless spending, negative self-talk, and avoidance of responsibility may feel minor, but their effects compound. Each neglected discipline makes the next one easier to ignore. Over time, the cost becomes heavy, and people are often surprised by where they end up. They forget that life was giving warnings all along through small signals they chose not to correct. What makes small disciplines powerful is that they are within reach. Anyone can start them. They do not require permission, perfect conditions, or extraordinary talent. They only require a decision. A person does not need to change their entire life today. They only need to change what they do today. The future responds not to grand promises, but to daily proof. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect in action. It is the willingness to do what is necessary rather than what is easy. Over time, this willingness reshapes identity. The person begins to see themselves as capable, reliable, and growing. That self-image then influences behavior, creating a reinforcing cycle of improvement. The remarkable thing is that small disciplines rarely feel heroic, but their absence creates regret that feels overwhelming. What feels hard today becomes easy tomorrow when practiced consistently. What feels easy today becomes hard tomorrow when neglected consistently. Life makes this trade without negotiation. Those who understand this principle stop waiting for the perfect moment and start honoring the present one. They focus less on dramatic change and more on daily alignment. One page read, one skill practiced, one promise kept, one habit reinforced. These quiet actions shape a future that looks impressive from the outside, but was built patiently from the inside. One disciplined day at a time, pain and failure are unavoidable parts of life. But the meaning a person assigns to them determines whether they become sources of growth or long-term obstacles. The same experience can either strengthen or weaken someone depending on the philosophy they hold. Two people can face identical setbacks, yet one emerges wiser and more capable, while the other becomes discouraged and bitter. The difference is not the event itself, but the interpretation formed in the mind. A losing philosophy views pain as proof of inadequacy and failure as a final verdict. When challenges arise, this mindset assumes something has gone wrong or that the person is not meant to succeed. Pain becomes personal, and failure becomes identity. Instead of asking what can be learned, the mind asks why it is unfair. This interpretation drains energy and narrows perspective, making future effort feel pointless. Over time, repeated setbacks reinforce the belief that struggle is a sign to stop. A constructive philosophy interprets pain differently. It sees pain as feedback rather than punishment. Discomfort becomes a signal that something is being stretched, refined, or tested. In this view, failure is not evidence of inability, but information that reveals what needs improvement. This interpretation preserves motivation and keeps the mind engaged. Instead of retreating, the individual becomes curious and adaptive. The way pain is framed also affects emotional resilience. When pain is seen as meaningless, it feels heavier and more exhausting. The mind resists it, which increases suffering. When pain is given purpose, it becomes tolerable and often empowering. Athletes understand this well. Physical discomfort during training is not a reason to quit. It is evidence that the body is being strengthened. The same principle applies mentally and emotionally. Growth rarely occurs in comfort. Failure, when interpreted through a healthy philosophy, becomes a teacher. Each setback exposes gaps in skill, preparation, or strategy. Without failure, these gaps would remain hidden. A person who avoids failure also avoids mastery. Those who succeed over time are not those who fail less, but those who learn more from failure. Their philosophy allows them to extract value from setbacks rather than shame. A losing philosophy turns past failures into permanent labels. A person begins to describe themselves by what went wrong rather than what is possible. This internal narrative quietly shapes future behavior. If someone believes they are bad at money, not good with people, or not meant for success, they subconsciously act in ways that confirm those beliefs. Pain then repeats itself, reinforcing the same story. A strong philosophy interrupts this cycle by separating experience from identity. It understands that failing at something does not mean being a failure. Painful experiences are events, not definitions. This distinction is crucial. It allows someone to face discomfort without self-condemnation. They can analyze mistakes objectively and move forward without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. The interpretation of pain also influences courage. When pain is feared as something that diminishes worth, people play small and avoid risk. When pain is accepted as part of the growth process, courage expands. The individual becomes willing to try, fail, adjust, and try again. Progress accelerates because fear no longer controls behavior. Life does not eliminate pain for anyone. What changes is how pain is used. A weak philosophy wastes pain through resentment and withdrawal. A strong philosophy invests pain into wisdom, skill, and resilience. Over time, this investment compounds. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once caused retreat becomes a reason to advance. The most powerful shift a person can make is to stop asking how to avoid pain and start asking how to use it. Pain becomes a tool rather than an obstacle. Failure becomes refinement rather than defeat. When philosophy changes, the emotional weight of challenges changes with it. The same storm that once knocked someone down becomes the force that strengthens their foundation, reshapes their perspective, and deepens their capacity to endure and grow. Problems are a natural part of life. No one escapes them, no matter how intelligent, disciplined, or fortunate they may be. The mistake most people make is believing that a better life means fewer problems. In reality, a better life usually comes with different, often more complex challenges. What determines whether problems overwhelm or refine a person is not their size, but the level of personal growth brought to meet them. When personal growth is neglected, even small problems feel heavy. Minor setbacks create stress. Simple responsibilities feel exhausting, and obstacles appear larger than they are. This happens because the individual has not expanded their skills, mindset, or emotional capacity. The problem remains the same, but the person facing it is unprepared. This imbalance creates frustration and the sense that life is unfair or overwhelming. Growth changes that balance. When someone commits to developing themselves, problems do not disappear, but they shrink in comparison. Increased knowledge creates better decisions. Improved discipline creates stability. Emotional maturity creates resilience. The person becomes larger than the problem. What once caused panic now prompts strategy. What once felt impossible becomes manageable. Many people attempt to solve problems by wishing they would go away. They hope for easier circumstances, fewer responsibilities, or less pressure. This approach keeps them small. Life responds not to wishes, but to growth. Problems often remain until the person develops the capacity to handle them. Once that capacity exists, the same problem either resolves or loses its power. Personal growth is not about perfection. It is about progression. Small improvements in thinking skill and self-control accumulate. Reading, learning, practicing, and reflecting all expand a person's inner resources. Over time, this expansion changes how challenges are perceived. Instead of seeing problems as interruptions, the individual sees them as part of the process. This shift reduces resistance and increases effectiveness. A lack of growth often leads to repeated problems. The same patterns show up again and again in finances, relationships, and work because the person has not changed. New situations cannot produce better results with old thinking. Growth breaks this cycle. When the person changes, the pattern changes. Problems that once repeated lose relevance because the individual no longer responds the same way. Growth also brings perspective. It teaches that problems are temporary, but the skills gained by solving them are permanent. Each challenge, when handled well, leaves behind confidence and competence. This creates momentum. The person becomes less afraid of future difficulties because past ones have strengthened them rather than defeated them. It is important to understand that growth must exceed the problem, not match it. If growth only keeps pace with challenges, life feels like constant struggle. When growth surpasses problems, life feels manageable, even demanding, but not crushing. This is why continuous improvement is essential. Waiting until a crisis appears is often too late. Growth is most effective when practiced before it is urgently needed. People who focus on growth stop complaining about problems. Complaining does not reduce difficulty, it only drains energy. Growth, on the other hand, converts energy into capability. As capability increases, confidence follows. The individual no longer feels like life is happening to them, but that they are equipped to meet whatever arrives. Life will always test the level at which a person is operating. When growth slows, problems feel heavier. When growth accelerates, problems feel lighter. This dynamic never stops. The goal is not to reach a point where problems end, but to reach a point where they no longer intimidate. When personal growth becomes a daily priority, problems lose their power to define the experience of life. They become tasks instead of threats, lessons instead of punishments, and stepping stones instead of barriers. A person who commits to growing larger than their problems eventually discovers that life does not get easier, but they become stronger, wiser, and more capable with each challenge they rise to meet. Many people spend their lives waiting for a single moment that will change everything. They imagine success arriving as a breakthrough, a sudden opportunity, or a dramatic turning point. This belief creates impatience and disappointment because life rarely operates through instant transformation. Progress happens quietly through repetition, discipline, and time. When success is treated as an event, people either rush the process or quit when results do not appear quickly. A process is a sequence of small, intentional actions performed consistently. It is not glamorous, and it does not offer immediate reward. That is why it is often ignored. Yet, everything meaningful in life grows through a process. Physical strength develops through repeated training. Knowledge deepens through continual learning. Trust is built through consistent behavior. None of these appear overnight, and none can be skipped without consequence. When people chase events, they become dependent on motivation. Motivation comes and goes, which leads to inconsistency. A process does not rely on emotion. It relies on structure. Structure creates reliability. A person who commits to a process continues even on days when enthusiasm is low. This consistency is what produces lasting results. The outcome becomes inevitable because the actions are predictable. A losing mindset looks for shortcuts. It searches for techniques, hacks, or secret formulas. When these fail, discouragement follows. A process-oriented mindset accepts that progress requires patience. It understands that mastery is earned, not discovered. This acceptance removes frustration because expectations align with reality. The person no longer asks why success is taking so long. They focus on executing today's steps well. Processes also create identity. Repeated actions shape self-image. When someone shows up daily to practice, learn, or improve, they begin to see themselves as disciplined and capable. This identity reinforces behavior, creating a positive loop. Success then becomes less about achieving a goal and more about becoming a certain kind of person. Goals are reached as a byproduct of that identity. Failure is also redefined within a process. Missing a step does not mean the entire journey is ruined. It simply means the process must resume. This prevents emotional overreaction. Instead of quitting after a mistake, the individual adjusts and continues. Progress remains intact because it is measured over time, not in isolated moments. A process builds resilience because it teaches patience. It trains the mind to value steady improvement rather than instant reward. This patience becomes an advantage in a world that expects everything immediately. While others quit when progress feels slow, the person committed to a process continues accumulating small gains. Over time, these gains separate them from the crowd. The process also removes pressure. When success is treated as a single event, every attempt feels heavy. When it is treated as a process, each action feels manageable. Today's task does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be completed. This mindset reduces anxiety and increases focus. The person stays present rather than overwhelmed by the future. Nature itself operates through process. Seeds do not become trees overnight. Skills do not become mastery instantly. Understanding this aligns effort with reality. Instead of fighting time, the individual works with it. Daily habits become the vehicle for progress, and patience becomes a strength rather than a weakness. Those who trust the process do not need constant reassurance. They understand that effort invested consistently will produce results eventually. This belief keeps them steady during slow periods and humble during successful ones. They do not rush growth, nor do they fear delay. They continue showing up, refining their actions, and improving their approach. When success is seen as a process, quitting makes less sense. There is no single moment to give up on, only steps to continue taking. The person stops waiting for life to change and focuses on changing what they do each day. Over time, what once felt ordinary becomes exceptional, not because of one dramatic event, but because of thousands of small, intentional actions repeated with patience and purpose. The most influential voice in a person's life is the one they hear all day long inside their own mind. This inner dialogue runs constantly, shaping perception, emotion, and behavior. Long before an action is taken, a conversation has already occurred internally. If that conversation is filled with doubt, criticism, and limitation, the outer results will reflect it. If it is filled with clarity, encouragement, and direction, behavior begins to change naturally. Many people are unaware of how they speak to themselves. The inner voice often operates on autopilot, repeating phrases learned from past experiences, authority figures, or moments of failure. Statements like, "I'm not good at this," "I always mess things up," or "This never works for me," feel familiar, so they go unchallenged. Over time, these thoughts are accepted as facts rather than opinions. Once that happens, behavior adjusts to match them, and the results confirm the belief. The mind seeks consistency. When someone repeatedly tells themselves a certain story, the brain looks for evidence to support it. This is why negative self-talk becomes self-fulfilling. A person who believes they are incapable will hesitate, avoid risk, and give up quickly. These behaviors then produce poor outcomes, which seem to validate the original belief. The cycle continues, not because the belief was true, but because it was repeated. Changing outer results without addressing inner dialogue is difficult, because behavior follows belief. Effort may increase temporarily, but without mental alignment, it rarely lasts. When inner dialogue changes, however, behavior shifts with less resistance. A person who begins to speak to themselves with intention starts making different choices. They prepare more carefully, persist longer, and recover faster from setbacks. Positive inner dialogue does not mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is easy. It means speaking truth in a constructive way. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," the dialogue becomes, "And I can learn this." Instead of, "This is impossible," it becomes, "This is challenging, but manageable." These subtle changes keep the mind engaged rather than discouraged. They maintain forward motion instead of retreat. The tone of inner dialogue also affects emotional state. Harsh self-criticism creates tension and fear, which narrow thinking. Encouraging but honest self-talk creates calm and focus, which expand problem-solving ability. When the mind feels supported internally, it becomes more resilient externally. The person is less reactive and more deliberate. Inner dialogue shapes standards. What someone tells themselves determines what they tolerate. A person who speaks respectfully to themselves is less likely to accept poor habits, unhealthy relationships, or low expectations. Their inner conversation sets a baseline for behavior. Over time, this baseline becomes a personal code that guides decisions even when no one else is watching. Changing inner dialogue requires awareness and repetition. The old voice does not disappear immediately. It must be interrupted, questioned, and replaced. This is a daily practice, not a one-time decision. Each time a limiting thought is challenged, a new mental pathway is strengthened. With repetition, the new dialogue becomes automatic, and the old one fades. The most powerful transformations often begin quietly in the mind. No one sees the moment when a person stops tearing themselves down and starts building themselves up internally. Yet that invisible shift changes everything. Actions become more confident, goals feel more attainable, and setbacks lose their emotional sting. Outer success is rarely the result of sudden confidence. It is the result of consistent inner alignment, when the voice inside supports growth. Instead of sabotage, effort becomes sustainable. The person no longer has to force belief. It develops naturally through repeated, constructive self-conversation. Over time, the inner dialogue becomes a source of strength rather than doubt, guiding decisions, shaping habits, and steadily transforming the results experienced in the outer world. Extraordinary lives are not built from extraordinary moments, but from ordinary actions repeated with consistency. What separates those who achieve lasting success from those who remain stuck is rarely talent or intelligence. It is the willingness to perform simple, often uncelebrated actions day after day without needing immediate recognition. These actions appear insignificant on their own. Yet over time, they create results that seem remarkable from the outside. Most people underestimate ordinary actions because they do not feel powerful. Making a phone call, practicing a skill, saving a small amount of money, reading a few pages, or showing up on time does not feel like the path to greatness. Because the impact is delayed, the mind dismisses these behaviors as optional. People wait for inspiration or motivation, believing that big results require big actions. In reality, big results require consistency more than intensity. Consistency turns simplicity into strength. When an action is repeated daily, it becomes a habit. Habits reduce the need for decision-making, which conserves mental energy. This allows progress to continue even when motivation is low. Over time, habits compound. Just as small amounts of money grow through interest, small actions grow through repetition. The effect is gradual but powerful. Ordinary actions also build discipline. Each time a person follows through on a simple commitment, they strengthen their ability to follow through again. Discipline is not built through dramatic effort. It is built through reliability. The person who keeps small promises to themselves develops self-trust. That trust becomes confidence, and confidence leads to greater challenges being taken unwillingly. Extraordinary outcomes often appear sudden, but they are the result of long preparation. When opportunity arises, it favors those who have been practicing quietly. The person who has been sharpening their skills daily is ready when the moment arrives. To an observer, it looks like luck. In truth, it is readiness meeting opportunity. Those who neglect ordinary actions are unprepared when chances appear, even if they desire success just as strongly. Ordinary actions practiced consistently also shape identity. Behavior influences self-image. Someone who reads daily begins to see themselves as a learner. Someone who trains regularly begins to see themselves as disciplined. This identity reinforces behavior, creating a loop of improvement. The person no longer has to force action. It aligns with who they believe they are. Many people sabotage progress by seeking variety instead of consistency. They jump from one strategy to another, hoping something will work quickly. This prevents depth. Mastery requires repetition. Doing one thing well over time produces more results than doing many things poorly. Ordinary actions, when chosen wisely and practiced consistently, lead to excellence. The challenge with ordinary actions is patience. Results rarely show up immediately, which tempts people to quit. They assume their efforts are not working, when in reality the results are still forming. Life often delivers rewards later than expected, but never without preparation. Those who understand this stay committed through the quiet phases, trusting the process. Ordinary actions also protect against overwhelm. Instead of trying to change everything at once, the focus remains on what can be done today. This reduces stress and increases clarity. Progress feels manageable because it is broken into small steps. Over time, those steps add up to significant change. Extraordinary lives do not require extraordinary people. They require ordinary people who are willing to do ordinary things extraordinarily well. Consistency transforms simplicity into excellence. What seems boring becomes powerful when practiced daily. The gap between where someone is and where they want to be is often filled not with dramatic moves, but with simple actions done again and again with intention and care until they shape a life that reflects patience, discipline, and long-term commitment. Every life moves in the direction of its decisions. Not the dramatic ones made under pressure, but the quiet ones made in ordinary moments. Many people spend their time focusing on what they want: more money, better health, stronger relationships, greater confidence. Yet what they want is less important than who they are becoming. Desire alone has no power unless it is supported by identity. The future does not respond to wishes. It responds to character. A powerful shift happens when a person stops asking, "What do I want?" and starts asking, "Who must I become to have what I want?" This question changes everything. Goals can be temporary, but identity is permanent. When someone decides who they are becoming, their behavior begins to align naturally. Choices become clearer, habits become more intentional, and discipline feels less forced because it is connected to self-image. Most people drift because they have never made a conscious decision about who they are becoming. They react to circumstances, follow routines by default, and let habits shape them without direction. Over time, this creates a life that feels accidental rather than intentional. The absence of decision is still a decision, just one made by neglect. Life will shape anyone who does not choose to shape themselves. Deciding who you are becoming brings clarity. When identity is defined, decisions become simpler. A person who decides they are becoming disciplined no longer debates whether to act responsibly. A person who decides they are becoming reliable no longer negotiates with excuses. Identity becomes a filter through which choices pass. This reduces inner conflict and increases consistency. This decision is not about pretending or adopting a false image. It is about commitment. Becoming is a process, not a label. The decision does not mean perfection from day one. It means direction from day one. A person may still struggle, fail, and adjust, but they do so with purpose. Each action becomes a vote for the kind of person they are choosing to be. Focusing only on what you want often leads to frustration because outcomes take time. Focusing on who you are becoming keeps motivation alive because identity is reinforced daily through behavior. Even small actions matter when they align with a chosen direction. Reading one page, keeping one promise, or making one disciplined choice becomes meaningful because it supports the larger decision. Identity also influences resilience. When setbacks occur, a person anchored in becoming does not collapse. Failure becomes a temporary misstep, not a personal verdict. The individual returns to their decision and continues forward. They are not defined by what went wrong, but by the direction they have chosen. This approach removes pressure from external validation. Instead of constantly asking whether progress is fast enough or impressive enough, the focus remains on alignment. Am I acting like the person I decided to become today? This question creates steady growth and internal confidence. Progress becomes sustainable because it is rooted in values rather than emotion. The future is shaped quietly by repeated choices that reflect identity. Over time, those choices compound into skills, relationships, and opportunities that match the person someone has become. What once felt like effort becomes natural. Discipline becomes habit. Confidence becomes grounded. The life that emerges no longer feels forced. It feels earned. Deciding who you are becoming is one of the most powerful decisions a person can make because it shifts control inward. It moves focus away from outcomes that cannot be controlled and toward actions that can. The moment this decision is made, life begins to reorganize around it, not all at once, but steadily, through daily alignment between intention and behavior, until the future reflects the person you chose to become.